Welcome back from that quick break. If you just joined us, you are watching Twitter Jabs. And today we are discussing the proposal of MPs to elect the president. In studio, Mr. Jude Byamukama just joined us. He's a constitutional lawyer and he has a vast of experience in electoral law litigation and judicial review. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you.
Now, right before we went on the break, Mr. Felix was saying that, well, in this new parliamentary system that is being proposed, the president does not have, you don't have to go to State House to look for the president, the decisions can be made. But I'm asking you, sir, don't you think with this new parliamentary system that the separation of powers between the legislature and the executive, because they're very closely intertwined, don't you think that would be a problem? And this is what most Ugandans have been complaining about, the lack of separation of power.
No, I think in principle, it's what's being proposed is basically to have what we call a parliamentary system of governance.
Yes.
Where parliament is more or less sovereign, like in the United Kingdom, for instance.
Yes.
And even the South African system slightly. Because the idea is that the executive is supposed to be accountable to the legislature in principle.
Yes,
which really doesn't happen in our current dispensation because of the way it has been designed. We have got a very strong presidency, and I do not know whether still it would happen if it were not for President Museveni, who is there because of historical reasons, how in any case he came to occupy the seat of president. But strictly speaking, the executive is supposed to be ordinarily accountable to the legislature. Yes. That's to parliament, and which is not what we really see in this country. Like I've said, because largely historical reasons, I do not think any other president after President Museveni would be able to have like the kind of stranglehold that he has over parliament.
So do you think this is feasible, the proposal?
In principle, it wouldn't be a bad proposal. But for practical reasons, I see a lot of difficulties from a legal point of view. First of all, I think when you cannot just amend the constitution to change a system of governance through a normal parliamentary majority, two-thirds majority in parliament, because the article you'd have to amend to cause that change is not an article in the constitution which is entrenched. An article which is entrenched, we mean an article which requires for amendment, yes, where you need the two-thirds majorities of parliament at 3 readings plus a referendum of the people. But this article doesn't require a referendum. However, if we are to follow the reasoning of the justices of the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court, in the cases of Malema Birizi and Uganda Law Society and others against the Attorney General, which challenged the Constitution Amendment Bill previously of 2017, essentially the Supreme Court rule agreed with the principle that if you are going to make a change to the Constitution, which kind of alters the character of the Constitution,
yes,
then you need to go back to the people.
So
in other words,
are you seeing a referendum in the works?
I do not know whether what these people have, but clearly this is something, for me, one that would require a referendum. Secondly, this is a fundamental change to the Constitution.
Yes, it is.
And what it requires world over is that you should have people specifically elected to pass that Constitution, ideally. Or you enact that Constitution and then you give it to the people and let the people vote by referendum whether to adopt that Constitution as a whole. Because a system of governance, right now we are in a system of governance which is a presidential system.
Yes. Where
we all participate in electing the president one way or the other. But a parliamentary system is now a complete change from what we have.
Yeah.
If you recall, in 1993, for us to have this current constitution, we had to elect representatives called the Constituent Assembly delegates,
yes,
who went and sat in a Constituent Assembly whose job was to discuss and pass the 1995 Constitution, that Constitution which was eventually adopted in 1995. So that means when you are really overhauling the Constitution, which is what I think is really happening, you need to have a body that the people know we have elected honorable so and so to go and give our views about this constitution. And that's why you'll see, for instance, the amendment which Parliament had wanted to extend their tenure from 5 to 7 years,
yes,
why it was rejected by the courts of law. Among other reasons was they would be breaching a social contract. They were elected
yes,
to go and serve 5 years, and they were extending them to 7 years. I think the same reasoning would apply, that I have elected you to simply go and give my views in Parliament. I have not elected you to now go and decide for me that I can't elect the president.
Essentially, that power is supposed to be given back. But Mr. Felix, as you were saying before we went on the break, you were saying, yes, you don't have to look for the president to go to State House. Please finish your thoughts, sir.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Council Jude for a very wise submission. I've got high regards for him when it comes to a constitutional matter. And these are the brains we need to look into the merits and the demerits of this. And that's why we are bringing Ugandans who cares about a country should come out. We need to now start discussing substance of this, regardless of what. Now, you see, we have got the Constitution. And Constitution is not from heaven.
No,
okay? It's not from heaven. We have people like Jude, who are constitutional lawyers, who are able to help Ugandans, educate them that no.
The keyword being educating them.
Your right is still there. But can we try another system of governance? And we see.
Maybe it's because Ugandans are so, like, they are so locked into it, so innate to them that they have John Locke's system of governance, that it's life, liberty, and property. So they feel like you're taking away their liberty. But like you said, maybe they need to relearn some things to be able to adapt to this new system.
You see, this system that we proposed, I have already told you before that we are not only looking at even the president, we are even looking at the size of parliament. 400 and something members.
But why do these proposals usually come immediately after elections?
Because Ugandans discuss election when election is near. Whenever we are going to election, we start talking. You hear opposition say we want reforms in elections, or because if we go to the Supreme Court has given recommendations. There are some of the recommendations, a good recommendation that has been given out by the Supreme Court. It has never been implemented up to today. Who must we account for this? Let us talk about reforms in elections. By the time we are going to the next general election, we don't want to hear any complaint again. The ground is level. So what we are thinking, let our members of the opposition, the civil society organization, they also bring in their proposal on table. Say, okay, you people have proposed this. We as a constitutional lawyers, we are also thinking like this. And we have a Uganda that everybody can talk. Not the only one system where the center of power is the executive. Right now, even a member of parliament cannot get the president. You just to go to floor of parliament, ask the prime minister, what is the status of this road from this kilometer? Then the prime minister tells you that this matter we shall take it back to cabinet and I will inform the house in 14 days. And that is it. But let the president come.
But isn't it becoming a trend? If you remember Toji Kwatako, what unfolded there. By the time you get to the elections, then people have forgotten. Are people being coerced?
No. As Council Judas just said, that there are those entrenched laws in the code. There are articles which are entrenched in the Constitution. We are even putting Electoral Commission on notice. If this need a referendum, sure shall we. Let us deal with the issues of election in Uganda once for all. No Uganda should again die just because of election. Because we don't have a serious framework. We don't have a law that is guiding election properly. We are even talking about introducing, proposing legislation on how much do you spend If Council Jude wants to be a member of parliament for Nakawa, there is a law and said you spend beyond, if you spend, your spending is supposed to be beyond 250 million. When we start an audit and found that Jude, indeed you and your campaign managers, you were spending 10,000 buying voters, 10,000 for voters. You got 40,000 votes. If we calculate this amount of money, it means you have spent about 370 million, which is not required in law. So you are guilty of electoral malpractice and so on. One, we put it very clear that you will not be participating in any election for the next 10 years.
Okay, sir. Taking you back to the proposal on the table. Some people have said that, insinuating that you being a former member of parliament, by doing this, maybe you're trying to get the president's attention. What's your comment on that?
And that is a problem. President Museveni is my national chairman. Okay? I don't need to come on national TV and start seeking his attention. We know where to find him. If I want to hear my views, we have regional vice. Like, for instance, me, I come from northern Uganda. I would definitely meet Right Honorable Jacob Olanya and hear our views. We are talking national issues here. Okay?
Yes.
And if you ask me, I will even tell you right now, we as the members of NRM, we are even asking President
to the camera,
to start looking. It is time we need to discuss on a transition.
Okay.
If there's any will, we can ask him. It's a smooth transition. This is what NRM members, they don't talk about. They want to keep quiet. Council Jude knows very well in, I think, Article 178, 179 of the Constitution. It is there, talking about regional governments. It has never been implemented. These people have been quiet on this. It is time we start discussing that.
So the time has come.
Okay? We are implementing others. Serious issues in the constitutions, we are leaving others. Why do we need a regional government? Implement that. Why? Because we need to now decentralize the resources and expand the economy.
Talking about decentralizing the resources and expanding the economy, sir, this is directed towards you. Do you think that the ratio of the MPs to the Ugandan people will actually represent who they want for president? Do you think?
It's not. It's a question of how we design.
Yeah, because that's what most Ugandans
one, how consequences are designed. You know, there's a very funny problem in the way consequences are even demarcated in this country. You will find, for instance, when you go to the Karamoja sub-region, you will get consequences which are composed of less than 5,000 voters. Then when you come, for example, here to Buganda, you have a constituency like Chira municipality, which has over 120,000 voters. So already there is that disconnect that exists in the way the constituencies were demarcated. So it's not representative, really. You have got some very highly populated areas with very high number of registered voters represented by one MP. And then you have very small areas with around 5,000 voters also represented by one MP.
Exactly.
So technically speaking, because it's something I've studied before and tried to challenge before the Constitutional Court, when you look at the way constituencies are demarcated, ideally like Chira municipality here, which is represented by Honorable Semu Uganda, should be having around 10 members of parliament. It should be around 10 constituencies, not one. So one, that for me is the first problem we need to deal with. Before we can talk about whether members of parliament are really representative of the country as a whole.
Yeah.
The starting point would be, are the constituencies fairly demarcated? As my brother will probably tell you, again, most of these new constituencies, it's the president who has the last word. It's not what the law says as such, but I know for sure that the president has the last word. If he does not want a new constituency created somewhere, it won't be created. If he wants a constituency created, it will be created. So you have some constituencies which 10 years ago were represented by one MP, and now they are split into 4 constituencies. then you still have some extremely large constituencies where the people are always clamoring for subdivisions and they don't happen. Yeah. So for me, those are some of the more fundamental problems that I see. And that is why this proposal which my brother is mooting, for me, I think a piecemeal amendment to the Constitution of that kind would not be changing so much. We would still stay with a system of governance which is not very representative of the people who vote. When you look at the constitution of parliament that we have now, the way parliament is designed and constituted right now, yes. I think NRM has almost a 90% majority, really.
Yes, it does.
But now when you look at the presidential election, the president's victory, I think, was between 60 and 63. Yes. So ideally, you would presume that if around 35% of the population were saying they wanted a change of president, that should be reflected in the way parliament is designed, which doesn't happen. Why? Because in our constitution, we mixed up different governance systems, so we have got a bit of confusion in the constitution as far as I'm concerned. We got the American system of electing a president directly, in a way. Then we mixed it with the British system, where parliament is sovereign. And that is why you find in our constitution, we have a vice president, but who clearly seems misplaced, okay? Because she's not a running mate of the president who is elected. Yet ideally in the countries which have, for you to have, yes, even what Kenya kind of adopted.
Yeah.
Then we have got a leader of opposition who is chosen from the party with the majority seats in parliament. But technically speaking, we could have a scenario where someone could win a presidential election, but also fail to win a majority seats in parliament. It's a possibility, something which... So you could end up with a situation where a president and the leader of opposition come from the same party, which doesn't make sense. Why? Because we mixed up different systems of governance in our constitution. We have a prime minister, for heaven's sake. The position of prime minister is misplaced. I don't mean any disrespect to Honorable Robin. I'm just, referring to the way the position. Because now the person whom probably parliament would be electing would not be called a president, probably would be called a prime minister. That's why you see most of those countries which have that system. Then, if you are going to have a proposal like the Felix's mooting, you probably maybe need to have only an election where people are choosing, like some countries do, are choosing between parties. So that when I go to vote, I simply know I'm voting between NRM and Weather and NOOP and FDC and ANT. And I simply get a ballot paper and I say, for me, I've ticked NRM. Well, and then after the country has decided, we know which party has majority support, then the party sends its members of parliament. Again, some countries do that. So the party chooses based on whom they had approved as their flag bearer. If their constituency, they say they have voted for NRM, then off. Then off. Now, that system would probably be more representative than what we have now. So for me, the biggest problems that we have is in terms of the way our constitution is designed.
Because of time, sir, your last remarks as we wrap up.
So for me, I think what's critical, it's not bad to have a conversation and about what needs to change in our constitution. And we don't have to be worried. Obviously, any constitutional change is always driven by politics. It really doesn't matter. But the question should be, can we get it done? One, in accordance with the law. In accordance with the law. And maybe with some measure of good faith. So that at least the minority also have their say. And maybe also get something to accommodate them in the constitution. So that we avoid this tendency of the majority will always have their way because they have the numbers. Our constitution is meant to be a consensus political document which accommodates both sides within a country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That was very insightful. Mr. Felix, as we wrap up, what are your last remarks on this proposal? Talk to Ugandans out there and tell them.
My last remarks on this proposal is that every Ugandan should come out and be a decision makers of our country. The stakeholders in civil society, religious leaders, lawyers like this, come out, bring your views, let us start discussing. There are so many problems that we are facing because of our system of governance. We need to start discussing this. Let us stop lying low and discuss non-substantive issues. We are bringing constitutional amendments, the reforms and so on. You're bringing Kayonga. Let's forget about those. We can deal with that later. Let us deal with the supreme law of the land. That will make you safe, will make me safe, either politically, socially, and economically. If we need to overhaul the constitution that suits every Ugandans, Ugandans come out and we discuss this and agree. This is what I want all my fellow countrymen and women to understand. It's not about Museveni. It's no longer business as usual. No, it's not about Museveni. It's about Uganda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that submission. Well, you had that there from Mr. Felix Ongwech, who is the president of the Transformers Cadre Association of Uganda. And we also have Mr. Jude Byamukama here. He's a constitutional lawyer, and he has given us his insights to what he thinks about this new parliamentary system, proposed parliamentary system of governance. Well, we would love to hear from you. This is a very hot topic. And as Mr. Felix said, Ugandans need to come out and we need to have this dialogue. So please head on to our social media pages at CTV Uganda, and please don't forget to use the hashtag CTV Sunrise. We'd love to know your views on this topic. Well, do not go anywhere, because next on is Kira Natozo, and she has something in wellness. Don't blink.